that peeking behind the bars? That's Hannibal. Who's that played by 4 different stars? That's Hannibal. And whose face is detachable? That's Hannibal. And who's everybody's favorite cannibal? That's Hannibal.
That is stupid.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Macabre Podcast Universe. This is the podcast that exists. Why do we exist, Jordan?
To prove people wrong when they say that sequels are never better than the originals.
And we also exist because, gosh darn it, if Jordan and I don't love movies. And we love sitting there and we love analyzing them. And sometimes a movie's good and we love talking about that. Sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. And today we're going to talk about one that I haven't actually decided where I would put it. But
like if it's good, bad, or in the middle?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, yeah, but I don't want to spoil it because here's the thing, folks. In a few minutes, we're going to get through a little bit of the production notes, but we're going to have the uncredited art director on this very movie. We're interviewing him, and so that's going to be inserted in just a few minutes. So you're going to want to listen to that.
His name is Marco Trentini.
Awesome. Yes, and we haven't recorded the interview yet, but I'm sure it's awesome. And that's just like a huge bucket list for us. Mm-hmm. We've always wanted to talk to someone who's involved in the actual movie that we're discussing. So that is incredibly exciting. But before we get into that, we got to talk about this movie a little bit. So this movie is directed by Ridley Scott, who the year before everybody knows who Ridley Scott is. I don't think I need to go through his filmography, but the year before he'd done Gladiator. And then this same year that this comes out.
Oh, he hasn't done Gladiator yet?
The year before this movie, he does Gladiator.
Okay.
And then this movie comes out in 2001. And then the same year in 2001, he also releases Black Hawk Down. So that's where he's at in his career.
Is that a military movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about like a helicopter that gets shot down.
Probably Black Hawk?
Yeah. And then Orlando Bloom and a bunch of other guys are, from what I remember, really good.
Cool. I've just not seen it.
Been a long time, though, and I think the older I get, the more I'm not a huge fan of how Ridley Scott shoots action sequences, so I don't know if that movie would hold up for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so he directed this movie, and then I want to point out one of the producers is Dino De Laurentiis, and I'm pointing out that he's a producer, him and his wife, Martha, because they also produced Manhunter. But they did not produce Silence of the Lambs.
And why not?
They pretty much, after Manhunter didn't really do well, they were like, oh yeah, Orion Pictures, go ahead and do it. We're not really concerned about it. And
this is kind of funny.
Yeah. And then when Silence did well, they were like, ooh, Thomas Harris, you got to write another book. Please, please, please. We want to make more of these. Because when Silence came out, there was not a third book.
And the author didn't really have plans? Or maybe like...
I don't know about that portion of it. But we're going to get into that. I'm
so then
just
they make this
table.
movie and they're like, oh, this wasn't as successful as Silence of the Lambs.
I think it was a lot more financially successful than Silence of the Lambs.
Really?
So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got a huge box office. But that's because Silence of the Lambs did so well.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Which is usually the case.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even if a movie is not as well received, if it's the sequel to something like really well received, it's usually a bigger, but like...
That makes sense, yeah.
So then the screenplay is by David Mamet, who did The Untouchables, Glengarry Glen Ross, About Last Night, amongst many, many movies. And I think he did some plays and stuff like that. And it's also Steve Zalian, who did Clear and Present Danger, Mission Impossible 1, American Gangster, Gangs of New York, Moneyball, Girl with a Dragon Tattoo.
This is who again?
Steve Zalian.
Who's what?
One of the screenplay.
Okay.
And he also did The Irishman.
Jeez.
So he's got a pretty
the guy
impressive...
you want in your team.
Yeah. Hans Zimmer did the music. Was not crazy about the score to this movie. The cinematography is John Matheson, who is a Ridley Scott guy. He
Okay.
does a ton of Ridley Scott movies, and he's also doing the upcoming Doctor Strange 2.
Okay.
But now would be a good time to talk about the art direction. Wouldn't you say, Jordan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the interview portion of this episode. We have one of the art directors for the movie, Marco Trentini. Welcome to the show, Marco.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for inviting me. It's really big pleasure for me.
Cool.
Yeah. When Micah reached out to you, were you kind of thinking like, why does he want to talk about a movie I did 20 years ago?
But it's always nice to talk about something nice to remember anyway.
Yeah.
And I think also that this movie, it's one of the movie that changed a little bit my career.
Oh wow, cool.
Yes, because that was the first movie I did with Ridley Scott.
Ah, yes.
And after that, of course, came some other movies, but that was the first impact with the, I think, for me, is the best director ever, because I saw him working, and how he prepared the movie, how he's in the movie, in the story, in the costume, the art department. So for me, it was almost shocking, because
Yeah.
to be close to such a big director.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that ever kind of strange being on set with Hopkins and seeing him in that character?
Yes, and it was scary. I remember the first shooting day. The first shooting day, I was not on set. I was not a standby. I was preparing the set, so I just be there to be close to the designer, not the Spencer, and I saw the Anthony Hopkins, and he was into the part. He was really
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter. That was so weird, because I saw him before they did like an interview, they present to the press, and back when he was dressed, ready to start shooting, he was another one. He was him. He was
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. And also I remember one scene when he dropped the screen over the Patsy, the Spectre,
Mm-hmm.
policeman. That was a scene that was supposed to be prepared by the special effects, just pulling down the screen, the cloth, no?
Yeah.
And I think they were busy to do something else, something that was unexpected. So myself and my assistant, Alessandro Santucci, we tried to do our best. So we hooked the rope, and I asked, please, sorry, but I'm not from special effects. So when you pull it really strong once, because that's the only way that could work the system. And he did once, okay, good. Second take, good. Third, just in case, good. And then I went close to him and say, thanks a lot, because I was a little worried that couldn't work. And he said, this is my job. I pay for this.
Yeah.
And from such a big actor like him, also sometimes you don't expect nice word.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Totally. That's so cool. So for our audience and for us,
yes,
when we watch a movie, what should we be looking for if we're interested in seeing what you do? Or in other words, like, what do you do on a set? Because it's kind of an under talked about part of the industry.
Yeah, yes, of course. Okay, let's start to say that I want to tell a story about myself into this movie, because it's a little for me it was a pleasure, but I was not supposed to do that movie, because I've been called by Dante Ferretti for Gangs of New York at the time.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Okay, so as a director, but they have so much delayed on starting the movie. And during this time, my father was line producer on Hannibal, and he said, "Please, could you interview some director and set dresser for Noddy Spencer, because he doesn't know anyone." So I met with Norris some people. At the end of I present like 5 art directors, 10 set designers, 4 set decorator. He came to me and said, "Stop. I don't want anybody else than you. You need to work with me." I said, "I can't. I can't, because I give my word to Dante."
Mhm.
And basically, yeah, but this is Ridley Scott. Okay, but then that is Scorsese,
Yeah.
but because I had a family, of course, and I say, okay, the first that start, this is the first rule
Yeah.
of the cinema, no? First train that pass in front of you, you have to jump. You jump
Right.
off. And so I call Dante and I say, sorry, but I can't wait for your movie, and I need to go to work for someone else. So, and then I started as assistant art director, because as art director with only one guy, was Pierluigi Basile, my mentor. Also, I started with him.
Okay.
But during the preparation, the designer fell in love with me, because maybe because be younger, more ready to do what he wants, to go here, there. So at the end of the movie, I talk with him, say thanks for the nice experience, and say, you would be surprised, because I went straight to the producer and I said that you are my art director.
Mhm.
For me, it was a big surprise. And anyway, and then back to your question. Of course, my job was to find with the location managers a nice location that could fit
Right.
with the script, but also that Ridley could like, because Ridley has his point of view, and of course you need to give several possibility. And then, of course, we started to draw, to give some ideas of interiors. We didn't do many drawings, because at the beginning there were not so much to build.
Okay.
But only to, for example, to put some plug onto the windows, shops, redressing, helping more set dressing to build something. But after the technical scout, we found out that Ridley couldn't shoot the main scene. So when Hannibal is killing Pazzi, the policeman,
Yeah.
he couldn't shoot inside Palazzo Vecchio, because the rooms were not big enough, and also probably nobody knows that behind the balcony of Palazzo Vecchio, the facade, doesn't exist any room. It's just a staircase.
Oh, okay.
We didn't know too. So when we scouted and they opened this little door, so we were waiting for this beautiful, decorated room with frescoes here and there. We found this staircase that was just going up like to the sky,
Yeah.
And
that's so funny.
Yeah, so it didn't work for the scene. So let's say that in 4 days we drew the set. Me and my assistant Alessandro, and we show drawings, of course, some drawings to Italy, and say, okay, go for. So we start to look where to build, because in Florence they didn't have any stages. So we found this huge, immense deposit for the Maggio Fiorentino, which is the main theater in Florence. Okay. There's these big spaces. So we built the set that you can see in the movie, where it takes this speeching to like this lesson to the with the screen projection. This is built.
Yeah.
This is built.
Okay.
Okay.
We built the interior and the facade with the same balcony matching the real balcony.
Very
for the
cool.
close-up to the actors. And we had 3 weeks to build the set. So the problem was not just to build the walls, walls and columns or whatever, but was what to put on the walls, because Palazzo Vecchio is full of frescoes. So Pierluigi Basile, the art director, let's say the oldest art director, the senior art director, called 2 fantastic painters, Italian painters. They do frescoes, but they asked for like a month of work. They wanted to work on the in Rome and send what they did on paper or whatever on, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And luckily we found out that there were a company in Italy that was starting to do these frescoes on the wall, like tatouage.
Okay.
When the kids, they put the tattoo with the water, and then you peel the paper.
Right.
So I called this company, this is called a graphic reporter, and then I explain what we need to do, and they say, yes, we can do in time. So it was really strange, really strange.
Yeah.
And they start to talk about paper, 3D paper, 3M paper, printing, toner. So something at the beginning, that was a time where we started to use computers, and there was not even, we didn't know much about computers, printing as like that. We're still drawing by hand.
Sure.
And doing blueprints with ammonia. And so I asked an example. So they sent 2 days later an example with the box was created like a meter by meter, and it was shocking because it looked like a piece of the Cathedral Assisi felt and stole it. It was like cement with this print over the fresco, and it looks so real. That so we gave to them the job, and in 3 weeks we built, and then we start shoot the main scene. That was the main scene,
Yeah.
Right. That's like classic movie magic stuff that you love to hear about.
Yeah. This is what still make me love this job, this work.
Sure.
Because it's not more like before. I have to say, I come from. My grandfather worked in the movie business, my father, and then me. That's it. My daughter, she will not work in the movie business. It will end like that. But so it changed a lot the way to work. They changed to deal with the producers, with the movie. And anyway, it's different.
Yeah.
But still, when you have some problems and you find a solution and everybody are happy, and then they shoot something that could be impossible. That's how you say is so magical that it's part of our really. It's like taking some drugs, This is
It's like you get a high.
Our drugs. This is our drugs.
Yeah.
And so that is one episode. I mean, we can have so many because working with Italy is a kind of there's so many changes sometimes. But he knows exactly. So even if there's some changes, he will give you the time to do what needs to be done in the best way. So, for example, one day, remember, he was shooting in the center of Florence something, and Teddy Needham, who was his first AD, called me and say, Marco, we need to shoot now the exterior police station. I said, no, it's been canceled. So we stopped working, even making the graphic of the police station, anything. And say, come on set. So I was like 3 minutes away from the set. I walk and I found already the truck, camera ready, special effects with smoke machine, no? So what is the exterior? Say, and it was a Deutsche Bank. So it was the exterior of the Deutsche
Wow.
Bank. And Ridley said, Marco, come. I said, yeah, but Ridley, what can I do? It's nothing I can do. He said, don't worry, I'm gonna shoot in a way that we don't see any signage, but you have to cover me the machine, we call bankomat, is where you get the money.
Mm-hmm.
So I call immediately, the guy with the plywood, with stick plywood, with some black veneer. We put it, over, just very quick. But this is another part of our, beauty of the movie, that you can really do something that you never expect, because
Yeah.
never.
Yeah,
That's
like creative
cool.
problem solving. It's awesome.
I know this is yes. we could be part of the government because we are so good to solve problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I gotta compliment you, because I had very mixed feelings about the story of the movie, but it just looked fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yes.
especially the Italy scenes, you just get swept away
Yeah.
in this cool vision, and it looked beautiful. So
I look beautiful. In fact, even the writer, the writer of the book, when he came, he was very pleased because I have to say that Ridley gave a different look of Florence, which is more gothic, which is not Florence is not got. The look is more colorful, no. Gothic could be. In fact, I say why he was never wrote the story in Venice, where Lecter could walk through the channel, with the foggy town. But all started because the writer was a good friend of Capone.
Okay.
Capone family, where also we shot the interior. So Hannibal was living in this beautiful palace, which owned by the Capone family, and part of the movie was written there. So, when he was Adis was spending the time in Florence, but Ridley, I think, gave a little grayish color, a little bit gothic style to the movie.
yeah.
And I think also, you're right, I think not because I work on, but the part of Florence was more interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, we also scouted many locations, beautiful locations. Then for different reasons, we didn't shoot, we changed at the last minute. But Florence gave an immense possibility to Ridley to shoot what he wanted. That one of the most beautiful scene for me is the opera scene.
Yeah.
And that was shot in the cloister of the church, which is the Pazzi Chapel.
Okay.
So it's all part of the story, because the Pazzi family, the policeman was part of the Pazzi family, so it was all connected with the policeman. And so we built the stage. Cedresi made this beautiful work with this veil, this cloth, and the funny thing that we didn't know how to let the people sit down in that cloister, because it's grass. So every seat we would put the seat was just going down to the land, because the weight. So I became friend of the priest of the church, and I said, listen, we're gonna shoot at night, okay? And I promise you, I swear God, so if you give me the benches of your church, okay, tomorrow morning, which was Sunday also, you're gonna find all the benches inside, clean, in position. And I make a little offer. So I made this personal offer from my wallet to the church. It cost me at the time I think it was 2000 was still in lire. In lire, we were paying in lire. Yes, like now it would be in euros. Would be like 200 euros. So like 400.000 lire for me was a lot.
Yeah.
But the guy say, okay, take it, but tomorrow morning, please, 7 o'clock, I want the church dressed. So that happened, you know. So then you see all the people dressed sitting on the benches, real benches.
So you're behind the benches.
I'm behind the benches.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Oh man. So did you have any part in? Well, I'm sure you did. I wanted to ask about the iconic, crazy dinner scene at the end of the movie. With Ray Liotta's brain being eaten. Did you have anything?
No. That was part in the United States.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you just worked on the Italian
we
part
did,
of it.
we
Oh,
did,
okay.
Yes, because we were preparing at the same times, United States and Florence.
Oh, okay.
In fact, Norrie Spencer, the designer, a certain moment he left Florence because he had more problems. Let's say problems or whatever. What he said in the United States, not in Florence, because Florence was really under control. It was
Okay.
It was all fine. So a certain moment when we started to shoot the first day or second day, he left. He went back to the United States to find location. So we were like free. Me and Pierluigi, we were really free to do whatever, you know, not what we like it, but what they like it.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, you probably not so much because you see so much behind the scenes, but when we're watching a movie, sometimes you forget about shooting schedules. So I'm like, oh, you know, everyone's there on every day, and then you bring that up.
This is our problem. Just schedule, because sometimes, you know, you do your planning. We put on the wall, you know, all the days and whether shooting, prepping, striking. And for some reason, like for example, an actor needs to go to the festival of whatever, you know, needs to live a couple of days, all change, and then sometimes a set that was supposed to be shot to the end, they push forward, no. So it's the schedule is always like our first enemy sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Especially because before, I think there were more preparation timing, and now it's even shorter and shorter. You know, the last movies I work on, we had 7 weeks to prep, 6 weeks to prep with construction. I'm talking with construction.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And you need to start drawing, and at the same time, as soon you finish. Now sometimes you do just SketchUp drawing so quick. You know, at least the construction manager can start to build the volume, and then you give it the details. You know, the schedule it's sometimes very, very tough with us.
Yeah. So as the industry has progressed and there's a little more reliance on blue screens and green screens and digital effects, have you noticed that affecting your work and your jobs?
But in a way, sometimes helps because of course you can make some more beautiful set up to 5-6 meters, and then they will stand. Or you did just concentrate on a part, and then they help us. No, the most important thing is at the beginning to find the connection with the visual effects. If you have a nice guy at the beginning that comes with us doing the scouting, this is a secret, because he can tell, okay, don't worry, up to here it's your job, and then it's mine. So we don't lose time also to draw more than what we need to build. And
Oh, okay.
but vice versa, I sometimes, on Instagram, I spend hours looking at this visual effects. It is all green screen.
Mhm.
There are some movies where you have only one chair or a little ramp built
Yeah.
by construction, and then you see that they are in the beautiful palace, castle, or in the middle of the beautiful forest, which sometimes I understand that is impossible to, for example, for Tarzan to be in the jungle. No, okay, it's quite.
Yeah.
But there are some movies which I think visual effects are too much, and also for the
Yeah.
actors, I think they need to be very good actors, because work and shoot around green screen is not easy.
Mhm.
I can
Right.
tell you, I work as a director on the pilot of Tyrant, is a TV series,
Cool.
Yeah.
and the pilot was directed by David Yates. So
Okay. Yeah.
and so we scouted, we shot the movie, the series in between Marrakesh and Rabat, the capital in Morocco.
Yeah.
And we took him into really some very, very hard and difficult places,
Yeah.
very difficult, very tough. And one day it was me and him, because we couldn't go too many people, so we just me, him, the location manager, security guy, and when we left, he say, "Marco, thanks a lot." I said, "Why? I mean, this is our job. We are here to help you." No? He said, "No, you can't believe. After so many years scouting stages with green screen, now I can scout real location. The
Yeah.
smell, the very best smell, but it looked flowers for me, because
Yeah.
so it was
Oh,
funny,
wow.
because of course, imagine the Harry Potters, no?
Right. Yeah.
Which they built a lot anyway. But I
Right.
understand that for a director to be in the neighborhood with you see destroyed houses or
Mhm.
dirty streets like that, it gives you a little bit more the feeling of what it should be.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, and this movie has that, particularly, and I'm not just saying this because you're on here. The European stuff is like, I mean, I could imagine if I was an actor, which I'm not, I could imagine walking onto that beautiful set. You're like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is easy because it looks so great, So
Yeah.
it's very cool.
Yeah.
But for the rest, we had the mayor of the city helping us. The
Oh,
people, the people quite nice. Florence, the Florentine people are not easy, but they help quite a lot. Also, maybe because they like Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
No, and also the time it was just released Gladiator. So I think also, I mean, Ridley Scott is a huge name in Italy,
Right.
as a director. So this helps a lot.
Yep.
Oh yeah, because Gladiator, Rome, Italy. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Well,
Which that when they did the Gladiators, we were in Malta at the same time. So we were doing U571. They were doing Gladiators.
yeah.
And I remember one day we were testing the big crane for the rain over the submarines for the night scene, and it was so windy that the rain went over the set of Ridley Scott. So we were also
No.
yes, so they came immediately running. Say stop!
Yeah.
And you can hear, because it was like more than 1 kilometer, but we had this huge construction crane over the pool. No,
Right.
Oh my gosh.
so
Well, one more final thing for me that I wanted to ask is
Yeah.
you've worked on one of our favorite movies, and with one of our favorite directors, which is and I forgot I was going to wear the sweatshirt I have, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and you worked with Wes Anderson.
Yes, but honestly, I work for like 2 months
Uh-huh.
for them, but then I left the movie because I've been called to work as a supervising art director on Kingdom of Heaven.
Oh,
okay.
So I went with the supervising art director Stefano Ortolani. We went to on Holland in Amsterdam just to look for the boat.
Uh-huh.
Then we went to South Africa where we found the boat that was close enough, and we bought two American boats.
Wow.
One to cut and send in a room to use the pieces for the interior on the stage,
right.
and one to shoot on the sea. And
wow.
The funny thing that has been pointed, the one that needs to be cut because they have only one engine that work, the other one has two. And of course, what they did, they cut the one that has two engines.
No.
two engines. So there was very long travel from South Africa to Italy. Very long.
Wow.
So I have only I didn't meet him. I was supposed also to work with them on the new one in Rome, but now they're moving to Spain.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So I can't lie. I mean, I didn't work. I really didn't. I did some drawings. Drawing, but not enough to say that I really participate a lot on that project.
Okay.
But the call to make another Ridley Scott movie where we did huge constructions, and it was more interesting for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, more power to you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And hey, if you helped find the boats, that's cool enough to me.
That's great.
I mean, of course, always with the help of production, because that if you have, let's say, also because I of course I told you I come from a family working production, and I can tell you, if you have a very good production behind you, it's easier to work.
Yeah.
I met very good people like Branko Lustig, for example, one of the best producer. He was very helpful with construction, with my crew. I brought on the Kingdom of Heaven like 38 Italians in Morocco. It's not quite a big crew, and plus 12, 14 Croatian, because he was Croatian. But the secret, if you work with some good production that understand that you are not the enemy of the production, because the art department constructions, dressing, they're always the one that spend the money.
Yeah, right.
Especially when you need to build, no?
Yeah.
We start to ask for wood, suppliers, laborers, plaster, carpenters, blah blah blah. And so sometimes we look like we are the people that like to spend money, but it's not for us. It's for the show.
Yeah.
Then
very cool.
So this is what I can tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we covered all the things I wanted to cover.
Yeah.
One thing that I enjoyed really about the movie, with it taking place in Florence, a little selfishly, as we spent our honeymoon in Italy, and we spent some time in Florence, and I hadn't seen the movie since we've been married. And so like watching the movie and like seeing it, it was just like, oh yeah, we need to go back.
We've been there.
Yeah. It's like recognizing places. It was you always gotta love that in a movie too. And it's like, oh, I've been there, so I know what it looks like in person. But the way that they're like doing it for this movie is so cool.
Yeah,
it's like a side I've never seen.
Well, in fact, I think that in the backstage, when they do the backstage, or they do at the end of the movie anyway, every movie should have this part where really show the how the movie was done, was prepared. No,
Yeah.
because some people, I have a lot of friends that they think that we go, we shoot, they put the camera and we shoot.
Yeah.
And of course, that all the actors just fell in love with us, or vice versa. No, the women are in love with all the actors. So it is kind of strange ideas that people have, no?
Yeah.
But so it would be nice if sometimes movies show exactly since the first day, scouting under the rain, with the snow, in Venice with the water, up to the knees, no?
Yeah.
And picking different location that sometimes even you built and that had never been shot because change ideas, schedule, as we say, schedule change, and then set are never used. So this is something that people really don't know about our job.
Yeah.
And would be a very by the way, just last thing, you said that you you went to Florence, and then you say, too bad that we didn't know that was shoot there. I remember when we prepared the exterior of the house where Hannibal was living. We used the exterior. The night scene was in Ospedale degli Innocenti. It's a square where this ancient hospital. And this is a place where a lot of tourists goes to look. It's like a museum, okay?
Yeah.
So we went to prepare the scene, and of course we plug the real plug of the museum, and we put, I remember, whatever, palazzo or whatever. So completely different. So we just plug the real sign, and I was there to check, and then a bus arrived with 60 Chinese or Japanese.
Yeah.
And they start to stand in front of the palace, talking like that, and pointing that was the hospital degli Innocenti, Ospedale Innocenti, but the sign says something different, no?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I didn't. I was laughing so much. That I didn't have the time to stop them, to stop these people. They jumped into the bus and they left.
Yeah. So they went home and they were like, I can show you where that was.
It doesn't exist. This book is no good.
Oh, that's so funny.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate your generosity.
Whenever you want to talk about our other movies, just send me an email. I have a lot to do to say.
Cool. Yeah. No,
we love it.
It's great, and we're just thankful. This has been like when we started this podcast, we always said it'd be so cool if we could ever talk to someone who worked on one of the movies we're covering. So bucket list check today. So
good.
Thank you. And great job.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
No, I also, because after 24 years, I saw the movies 2 days ago. And, of course, I was surprised because sometimes you don't remember. When I do a movie, sometimes I don't remember also because when I see the movies that I do, the point of view is completely different from a normal audience, because I start to look to remember why we shot there. If I see any problems, any mistakes, this is for every movie. Every movie.
Yeah.
When I go to the theater, and if it's a good movie, I have to go twice.
Yeah.
The first is just like cutting the script, breaking down the movie, even if it's not mine.
Yeah.
The second one to enjoy it.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. It's
a
pleasure to meet you.
No, pleasure for me, and I hope to talk with you soon.
Yeah,
okay.
We would love that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Okay, and for you, it's day. Good, have a good day.
You too.
Yeah, it's still have a good night. Okay, so now let's talk about the movie comes out February 9th, 2001. So it's 10 years after Silence of the Lambs, almost to the day, because that one came out in 91, right? Not 90?
That sounds right.
Okay, and remember it came out on Valentine's Day. So this is like 10 years later. Here we go. The budget is $87 million. Domestically, it makes $165, and then worldwide it makes $351.6.
Yeah, that's a pretty big success.
Huge. But now let's get into
What about critically?
mixed.
Okay.
Mixed. So now we got to get into. Do you want you kind of researched the novel a little bit? Do you want to talk about that at all, or do you want me to talk about the novel and the filming process?
You can talk about that. And then I can interject.
Okay, that sounds good. So Jonathan Demme, who, reminder for the listeners, he directed Silence of the Lambs. He expressed interest in a sequel when Harris was done writing the third Hannibal book. And we already talked about Dino and Martha De Laurentiis. You know, they didn't produce Silence of the Lambs, but then they were like ready to go. And as soon as Thomas Harris called them and said, "I'm done with the book," they were like, okay, they bought it for $10 million, the rights.
I bet he could have gotten more.
Well, it said on the note that it was a record $10 million.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was like,
good.
At least for the
it's
time,
like, I just
huge.
hope he got as much as he could get.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he did.
He did. And then Demme takes a look at the material, starts reading the book, and he says he found the material too lurid and gory. And he said, quote, this is crazy, quote, "Tom Harris, as unpredictable as ever, took Clarice and Dr. Lecter's relationship in a direction that just didn't compute for me. And Clarice is drugged up and she's eating brains with him, and I just thought, I can't do this."
Yeah.
De Laurentiis said of Demme's decision to decline, one of the producers said, "When the Pope dies, we create a new Pope. Good luck to Jonathan Demme. Goodbye."
What is that? What does that mean?
I know. So, yeah. So right away you have the definitive Hannibal people, Jonathan Demme being the one, and we'll talk about Jodie Foster in a little bit here. And they're like, "Oh, this is not the story we told. It would feel wrong for us to return."
Yeah, he probably. Well, I guess I'm just assuming because I haven't read the books, but Demme might have read the book and was like, Clarice, she's just kind of a lady that all the guys fawn over, but not in a feminist way in the last movie.
Yeah.
Especially with the end of the book. It's like everything that he built upon is kind of torn down in this movie. I'll speak to the movie, which is a huge bummer.
Well, so when we started this series, we watched Manhunter, and I thought, oh man, I want to read these books bad because this is cool. We watched Silence of the Lambs, and I'm thinking I got to read these books. And then reading about the production of this movie. So last night when we watched the movie, it was my first time. Was it? It was your second time?
I've seen it before, yeah. But it's been so long that it was kind of like watching it for the first time.
Right. And I did remember you saying that. I was just setting up the audience for you.
Thanks.
I listen. But it really felt, Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs have their own distinct style, and I like that. And if you'll remember last week, I even said, I hope that each movie is really distinct in its style. And I'm still hoping that. And I was actually, even though some of Ridley's approach to the film I don't particularly like on levels of
artistry,
just personal taste.
Yeah.
I was still like, well, I'm glad they're not trying to make Silence of the Lambs. I did like that element of the movie, but it felt very, very different and very, very weird in terms of just themes and motives, and it didn't really.
It was kind of all over the place, but it sounds like the book kind of was too. Well, and it also sounds like someone asked him to write the book and he did it. I'm wondering if he always had, he has more to tell, but he didn't feel like any strong need to write one right away. But someone asked him to, so he's like, well, I guess I will because I got more. But maybe it wasn't the right time for him to do it.
Well, here is my big take after watching the movie and seeing those two movies and reading about how this movie is made. I think that it's a problem with the source material, not the movie we watched.
Yeah.
Is the impression I'm getting, because it sounds like when we were watching the movie last night, I felt like the movie's just kind of going along, and then it has these pretty insane graphic moments of the movie. And the movie also felt like it was a lot more concerned with plot than psychology, whereas the other two movies, you're like in the heads of the characters.
Yes.
And then reading about how like Demi and, again, we'll get into it, Jodie Foster are like seeing what the book is, it seems like they're like, this isn't really about the characters the way they've been.
And I feel like they were hammering so hard that Hannibal was a cannibal.
Yeah.
So hard, like it was almost campy a little bit. Like,
sure.
And there were some parts of it that I thought were really interesting and with that part of it, but it is like even him giving the Italian detective's wife like that poem by Dante Alighieri, I think, but it was about like cannibalism and stuff, and it's just like, why is everything he does cannibalism? Like it seems like it's not like whatever his motivation is, the cannibalism is a byproduct of it. It's like the cause and effect kind of, or I don't know, but like they just made it like that was his whole identity, and it just wasn't that interesting. It's like having a serial killer, like making a movie where someone's a murderer, and it's just like, ooh, it's so cool. Look how he's killing. It's like Saw, but not like totally. But like, look at how crazy and gory this person is, and how twisted they are. And it's like, yeah, they're just ripping people to shreds. That's it. That's how it felt. Not as insane as that. That was like a crazy example, but that's how it felt.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think like my summary, my takeaway is that actually, and this is only a guess, I'd have to read the book, which I'm no longer interested in reading this book. I still would like to read Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs. But if I read this book, I think I would go, oh, the movie's way better than the book. Is the impression I'm getting.
The book is way more graphic than this movie because we read the synopsis. So, I mean, I'm not going to talk about how much more graphic it is, but like there's even like some incest stuff. And it's like, why? Why would people want to? No one wants to read about that. And
and it sounds like it's done in a way that's not like... It feels like the violence and gore in the story, and then reading about the extra stuff that's in it is not in there as like a study of humanity and like depravity and stuff. It just feels like it's there because like, well, Silence of the Lambs was really big and that was gory, so I need to go gorier. Is how it the
does.
Impression I'm getting.
And I'll just talk about it now, but because I was reading the synopsis and it ends with Clarice and Hannibal running off together as lovers.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I mean, I know I haven't read the other books, but like, because it is a series and they're all kind of serialized, but it's the same characters. And in the last movie, they made Clarice like very, I don't know, independent. She does what she wants and she's like, she has morals.
Yeah.
So therefore she would never do that. That like never makes sense for me in a world where she would run away with him. And that just doesn't make sense.
So, and I think that leads into, this is a quote from Ridley Scott.
Okay.
So he said, I couldn't take that quantum leap emotionally on behalf of Starling, referring to the ending of the novel. Certainly on behalf of Hannibal, I'm sure that's been in the back of his mind for a number of years, but for Starling, no. I think one of the attractions about Starling to Hannibal is what a straight arrow she is.
Yeah.
He also did find the book believable, or Ridley did not find the book believable after the opera scene, which became like a vampire movie.
Okay.
And then Harris gave Scott permission to change the ending.
Okay.
So like that signifies to me, I have mixed thoughts about Ridley Scott. I'm like confused about what I think of him as a director.
Yeah.
But that makes me feel like he actually like reined in the movie like to what it could have been.
I agree with that.
So it is a little like it's making me see the movie in a lot different light than when we were watching it last night as the follow-up to Silence of the Lambs, and that's all we knew.
Yeah.
It feels like, oh, he actually like maybe sanded some edges to like a kind of a bad book.
Still, though, a movie I would never want to watch again.
Yeah, I don't think so. But hey, I'll tell you one thing. It looked great. The art design, and I'm not just saying that because we had him on here, but the locations and the sets and stuff were fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you're shooting in Florence. How could they not look fantastic?
Well, I think it's a little more than that.
I know. But they like get to start with such great things, and then what they were able to do from there was very cool.
But even, I mean, then when they get to go to the East Coast of America and stuff, I mean, all that looks great, and it's it's cool.
Yeah.
So Dino De Laurentiis approaches Ridley Scott. He's like, Demi dropped out. I would like you to make this movie, Hannibal. And Ridley Scott is on the set of Gladiator when he approaches him, and he says, Dino, I'm doing a Roman epic right now. I don't want to do elephants coming over the Alps next, old boy, thinking it was the historical figure from Carthage.
Huh?
I did not say that well. So Dino De Laurentiis comes onto set.
And he wants him to make. Oh, he thinks Hannibal like a mythological character.
The character from Carthage, like the history of Rome.
Yeah.
And that's he's a real person.
Yeah.
And so he's like, dude, I'm doing a Roman epic. I can't follow it up.
That's so
with
dumb.
A Roman epic. Ted Talley, the screenwriter for the previous movie, didn't want to write this one because he had problems with the novel. I don't know what the problems were, but that's what he said. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So once again, you have these people who are like, this book's not, they're basically saying the book's not good.
Yeah, kind of.
And then Mamet, this is the first listed screenwriter. Apparently his draft is like insanely bad. And Steven Zalian came in and like was like a huge change, like made it much, much better.
Yeah.
That's all I know though. Steven Zalian, the writer of Schindler's List, he declined Hannibal, saying he was busy, and he said this, this is why we exist. He said, you can almost never win when you do a sequel. And what?
Boo-hoo.
Yeah. But then, then he goes on to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about Jodie Foster. She was like, Silence of the Lambs comes out, and I'm sure they're just hearing rumblings about him writing a book or something like that. And she's going, I'm excited. I want to do this character again. I love this character. She's ready to go.
And then she reads the book.
Well, and then like years later, Foster said in December 1999 that the characterization of Starling in the book had negative attributes and betrayed the original character.
Amen.
And then in 2005, she has this quote. The official reason I didn't do Hannibal is I was doing another movie, Flora Plum. So I get to say in a nice, dignified way that I wasn't available when the movie was being shot. Clarice meant so much to Jonathan and I. She really did. And I know it sounds kind of strange to say, but there was no way that either of us could really trample on her.
Whoa.
And then also Anthony Hopkins has something to say.
Yes.
He says, I was kind of surprised by this book, Hannibal. I thought it was really overreaching and so bizarre, so I couldn't make up my mind about it. Some of it I found intriguing. Some I was a little doubtful about. That's kind of wild.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder if it is that thing that happens sometimes where Thomas Harris is just like, this is so successful and popular, I really got to outdo myself, and doesn't like stay true to the characters.
Also, again, someone asked him to do it. It didn't start in a place.
Well, it may have. I didn't look up when he started.
I mean, no. But I'm not saying it's like he was like, I'm done with this forever, and someone asked him to do it, and he scrounged up some stuff. Like I'm saying, he probably had plans and ideas, and they had to do it faster or sooner than he maybe was ready for. Whether or not he consciously knows that.
Yeah. They did. The producers did say that it took a lot longer than they had hoped. So I think he did get. I think he did get to do what he wanted to do as an artist.
Yeah.
But I don't think that negates your point, because even there might have just been a clicking.
Well, just knowing that it's already going to be turned into a movie.
Yeah, is pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have also just been thinking, instead of like, I'm going to sit here and write this book, he could have been thinking, I got to really like make this cinematic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then. Just two more notes. Makeup is by Greg Canham. Gotta shout that out, because the makeup in this movie is crazy. And then co-producer Martha De Laurentiis claimed they had a, quote, funny situation with Oldman wanting a prominent credit. She said, now how can you have a prominent credit with Hannibal? The characters are Hannibal and Clarice Starling. So we really couldn't work.
Who is this person?
So we really couldn't work anything out at first. Oldman was apparently out of the film for a while. because he couldn't get a
Oh
prominent
my
credit.
gosh, get over yourself.
But then he came back in asking if he could go unbilled. And
So
then
he was like talking to a friend and just complaining about it, and they were like, "Have you ever heard about doing the uncredited, the unbilled?" And he's like, "Tell me more."
And so, and that would allow Oldman to transform and be unrecognizable as himself to play the part,
As if he wasn't already unrecognizable enough.
And then he, in like even in the theater, like I saw a note that said later in home releases they added his name to the credits, so I don't even think he was in the credits, which is kind of crazy.
That is weird.
But that's so funny that the crediting stuff is so fascinating to me, and I love it. I love reading about it, but it is wild that certain people make certain decisions based on crediting.
I mean, I don't really know. I'm really bad with years and like when movies came out, but this movie's like 20 years old now, and that's 20 years back in his career before he's done a lot of things that people know him for today, even his Oscar-winning thing.
Right.
But like maybe that was a point. He was in a point in his career where he was trying to get more notoriety than he already was a big deal, I think, during that time.
Definitely.
But trying to like get prestige.
Yeah.
Because he's not only that, he's like in a movie with Anthony Hopkins now, which is like a pretty big deal. So maybe it's like this is finally maybe a play, like strategy to be prominently billed in this prominent big franchise. And they were like, but do you know what the franchise is?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way with this one.
Yeah, because this is no matter who else is in this movie, it's Anthony Hopkins, Julianne Moore, or whoever's Jodie.
Clarice.
Clarice.
Yeah.
I feel like it has to be. I mean, unless you have like Paul Newman in it or something like that, and then
well, he would probably be unbilled.
well,
he probably would.
He would get the and or the with.
Yeah.
What you love. See, if I was an actor, that's all I'd want is to get into that game where you get the and or the with. That's the best.
Yeah.
But I think that's a pretty good transition. Can we talk some Gary Oldman?
Yeah. So Gary Oldman, people. Well, we've talked about him before.
We've talked about him. But we got to talk about what we discovered last night.
Yeah. So for those who have not seen this movie, Gary Oldman, like if you watched it, you probably would like end the movie and be like, so who was Gary Oldman? That's because he's the guy in the crazy, crazy makeup. Like he's disfigured because of what Hannibal did to him.
Yeah.
And
I was very disappointed that that's what Hannibal did to him, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
It didn't seem that crazy. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So he like also does this crazy grating voice.
Like this kind of, and
oh my gosh. And that's when it finally was kind of a light bulb that went off for us on Gary Oldman. And I think we've for ourselves have figured him out for us.
Yeah, so we grew up knowing Gary Oldman mainly from for me, I would say the Dark Knight trilogy. Yep. And then for you the Dark Knight and Harry Potter.
Black. Yeah.
And we realized last night, because earlier or in 2020 he was in Mank, which is a movie that by now he's probably won an Oscar for.
No, he won't. He won't.
But I must say, I think his performance in that movie is awful, personally. I think it's a very bad performance.
Yeah.
But also, no, I think it's a bad performance.
Yeah.
And then he won an Oscar for Churchill.
Yep.
Or Darkest Hour, which is not a bad performance, but it's very big.
Yeah.
It's very big. He's in makeup and stuff like that. And I feel like there was something we watched recently, too, besides Mank, where we were like, man, he's like big in this movie.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Now, when you put up those performances, Mank, even Darkest Hour, if you put those up against him in Harry Potter and Dark Knight, he is playing maybe the subtlest he has ever played anything in as Sirius Black and I cannot remember the policeman's name in
Gordon
as Gordon.
I just think that last night was like we finally reached a threshold of the amount of Gary Oldman movies we've watched, and that's when all of the equations and algorithms worked in our brains, and we were like, ding, 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 got him, figured him out, because it realizing that those are
like, how do I even express this?
Realizing that those are his subtle performances, the two that you mentioned,
in movies
Are
that
things
are
we've
not
never-
subtle movies.
Yeah, and we've never considered that before.
But that's like how we knew him, whereas I think our parents grew up with him in Air Force One, Fifth Element, Leon the Professional. And so in those, he's like,
How was he in
big.
Tinker Tailor? Oh, he plays Dracula? This guy's big.
Yes, but it's like we did not grow up in that Gary Oldman period.
Yeah.
So we knew him as this like wonderfully understated cop in Gotham that's just trying to do his best and help Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Yeah. And be a good dad.
And it's like, yeah, that's his most subtle and toned down performance, I think, is Gordon. And then as a second, I would put Sirius Black. And it's just wild because when I was watching this movie, I'm like, man, to quote Blank Check, he loves to bathe in the river of ham. And he loves to drink out of that river, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he is one of our hammiest actors. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We need ham.
We're not saying he's a bad actor.
No, but I think that helped me because I remember watching Darkest Hour and just being like, geez. I mean, he is playing a big historical person, but it's like, dude, this is a huge performance. And by then he had already won the Oscar. And I think that year there were like 2 or 3 other people I thought had a better performance. So I was like, come on. But now I'm like, okay, no, I get it. I guess he's pretty toned down in Churchill or Darkest Hour, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he likes to do voices.
He loves to do voices. And this one, by the end of the movie, I could not take it anymore. I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I ended up hating it.
And
but you're kind of supposed to hate him as a character.
But I think when you couple that with him just being in Mank, where it was impossible to hear any of the dialogue in that movie. And then this weekend, we also watched Tenet twice, which is impossible to hear the dialogue. It was like, no, I want to be able to understand my characters.
I agree. And I think pretty much everyone else would agree with you.
And to quote my Letterboxd review of Mank, I said, I will give Gary Oldman $20 if he enunciates in his next movie. And I stand by that. If you enunciate in your next movie, and I get to meet you in person, I'll give you $20. Because I would just love it if you enunciated.
Do you remember, I don't know why I remembered this, but I'm remembering it right now, when Jack White did his Amex American whatever live performance on YouTube, and you get to choose who directs it, and he chose it Gary Oldman, and the moment they
met for the first time,
they tackled each other and started fighting.
Jack jumped up and tackled him.
Yeah. That is cool.
That was cool.
That was definitely, when I saw that, I was like, this Jack White guy's cooler than I thought. And I already thought he was pretty cool. And I think they drew blood.
Yeah. That's actually smart, though. If you're going to work with a really famous, prestigious person, if you tackle them or do something really crazy, you break the tension of celebrity.
Well, you just saw,
you know
see that and you're like, oh, he's wanted to do that ever since he's known about Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
He just probably saw him in a movie and he's like, I want to tackle that guy.
Yeah. So that's Gary Oldman, and we thank you for listening to the episode, folks. That was worth the price of admission alone.
We also have, I don't think we covered him in the last movie, so I'll cover him now. Frankie Faison, who plays Nurse Barney.
So he is in the last movie?
Oh, I guess I should confirm that, but it seemed like the same guy.
I couldn't tell, and it's been 10 years, so it's a little bit tough to tell.
I gotta go back.
So let's see. I want to look too. Here we go. It's a race.
Yes, Barney.
Okay, cool.
It is him. So he is in The Grudge, The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain, The Village. It's a show, not the movie. I'm Your Woman, Grey's Anatomy, The Expanse. And Hawaii Five-0, a lot of TV shows. And then, let's go back. And then Ray Liotta is also in this movie, which is kind of crazy. Never thought we would cover Ray Liotta on this podcast.
I know.
Because he's not a franchise guy.
No.
Not that he's publicly said that. He's just really not in franchises, though. He is, of course, Henry Hill in Goodfellas, which we watched recently, and gosh.
I mean, it's a perfect movie.
It is.
The movies really just don't get any better than Goodfellas. Man.
Yeah, he's so good. And then he's in Narc, Marriage Story, Shades of Blue.
Oh, I've always forget he's in that.
He's in Young Sheldon.
Oh, whoops.
Modern Family. A lot
They
of
got him in Modern Family. That
they got him in
rules.
Modern Family, and they got him in. There was something else. Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Cool.
But he's so big now. He shows up in something, and you're like, they got Ray Liotta.
He's in Killing Them Softly too. I think
he is. I don't remember that.
I'm pretty sure he's in that, which is a great movie.
Sin City.
Cool.
Yeah.
He's good
great
at being smarmy.
He really is. And then Giancarlo Giannini plays Inspector Rinaldo Pazzi.
Mm-hmm.
He is in Quantum of Solace.
Wow.
Love and Anarchy. Casino Royale. Okay, he plays Renee Mathis. Do you know who that is? Okay.
No.
Well, he's in a couple of them.
I mean, I think he's like a 1 or 2 scene guy,
He's with everyone with the computers, probably.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Man on Fire, Catch-22.
Okay,
Lots of stuff.
He looked familiar, and
Yeah,
you've
he
named
did.
like 4 movies that I've seen him in, so that makes sense.
And then the guy who plays the doctor for Gary Oldman.
Oh, yeah.
Zeljko Ivanek is his name.
That's cool. Is it a Z or an X?
Z.
Wow.
Oh, he's in 3 Billboards. He's a cop in 3 Billboards.
Okay.
If you saw him, you'd know.
No, I can see him. There's something that he's in that I really know. It's
7
like,
Psychopaths.
I feel like he's in
Argo.
like 24 or something
In
like
Bruges.
that.
We've seen him in a lot. I think that's what you're feeling.
But
12
I feel
Monkeys, the show.
I think I saw him weekly for a while there.
Did you watch 12 Monkeys?
No.
Did you watch Suits?
No.
What about Madame Secretary?
No. Keep going back just a little further.
True Blood?
No.
White Collar?
No.
The Mob Doctor?
No.
The Bourne Legacy?
I've seen that, yeah.
Tower Heist? Dudes and everything, okay?
Can you just go to like the early 2000s and just see if there's any shows?
The Job, ER, Dancer in the Dark, Homicide the Movie. Oh, that's not a show. He's in Black Hawk Down.
Okay, I should probably give it up.
Crossing Jordan, Twilight Zone.
Was that about you? Crossing Jordan?
No, different Jordan. Okay. And then I think that's it, actually. Pretty much.
Okay.
Because we covered Julianne Moore before.
We have, yeah. For our Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World episode with Nick Turner and Lyra Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Check it out. So the movie begins, and it's a black screen. And we hear this guy kind of talking like this about stuff. And we see Barney and the caretaker and Gary Oldman in the crazy makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
again, really good job on the makeup.
the makeup in this movie is really, really, really insane.
Yeah.
And they're talking about something, and the Gary Oldman character is buying Hannibal stuff off of like the market, like the black market.
Yeah, so I don't know what we were talking about before, but he sells him the Hannibal mask.
Yeah.
For $250,000.
Which it looks a lot different than it did in the other movie. It's green now, which it was.
I just
think
think that's
green,
the lighting.
But so okay, well he sells it to him, and then it's like Hannibal, and right there I'm kind of like, oh, this is sort of interesting. I actually think it's slightly less interesting that this guy has a connection to Hannibal than if this movie was about this weird person who is obsessed with the serial killer that never met him.
I think it's interesting. Well, it's not as interesting as the last movie, but even Buffalo Bill in the last movie had a connection to Hannibal.
That's true.
So I kind of think it's like fun that this world is very self-contained.
Yeah.
For the most part.
But I would like if the movie was made now, I think and maybe you couldn't back then, but you could tap into how right now there's been over the past like 5 years this almost movement of taking figures like Ted Bundy and mythologizing them, and in a way being, having Twitter threads where people are talking about how hot Ted Bundy is and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah, that kind of stuff is out there, and it's like we fetishized serial killers,
yeah,
and it would be cool if they ever made another like remade this movie. It would be
cool yeah, that would be interesting
if they severed the ties with the characters they've never met, and it's this person who's just obsessed with Hannibal.
Sounds like maybe we should just watch the TV show. I mean, I'm not saying that happens in the TV show, but we might get some form of that from it.
Yeah. But I mean, come on, that's a pretty good pitch. Give me that.
Yeah, I'm just saying you might have a solution.
But when we're done,
we're watching the TV show, by the way.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch it.
Yeah,
we've been Mads Mikkelsen just always killing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's just talk about him for a little bit.
Mads Mikkelsen?
No. Oh, yeah, sure. No, the Gary Oldman character.
Okay.
So he was like a pedophile person.
Yeah.
And he would have these camps and stuff with kids.
This is how much you got out of that part?
Yeah,
I was
when
so
he was talking
taken aback by the style choice of shooting that it really was like I had a hard time understanding what they were saying.
Well, I think they made a wise choice at doing a little more like, we'll just let you fill in the blanks in your head, because it sounds like
a different way. I hate that stuff that they did.
No, I mean just with his backstory. Like, I'm kind of glad they didn't get into it, although it does make the ending where his caretaker throws him into the pigs seem a little out of left field, because if you didn't catch the one sentence where it's implied that he was a pedophile or is a pedophile.
Oh, I think they make that pretty clear because that part is revealed when Clarice goes to, maybe we should not talk about it yet, but she goes to interview him and is talking about his sexual assaults. Like, so she also makes a note. This guy lives in a mansion, like a straight up mansion, and he is so rich. I think he's like a senator's son, or like was, or something. So he has all this money, and he basically bought his way out of prison time for his sexual assaults.
Yeah, because he has immunity from the government.
And then they get a little bit more into that, maybe with a throwaway sentence about what the sexual assaults were that I missed and that you picked up on. But they made it very clear that he's a sex offender.
Yeah.
But okay, so we see. Let's not get there yet, though.
Yeah, you're right. You're
right. we see Clarice pretty much right away after that opening scene, and she is working with the FBI, and they're in Seattle, and they're working at, sounds like with the Seattle DEA or something, like someone like that. So you have two organizations butting heads about what is the right thing to do, and she's a woman, so they don't want to do what she wants. You just can assume that that's what's going on because she's the only woman working with these men.
Yeah.
And they're at like this market in Seattle, and there's expected this drug deal going to go down. This big drug kingpin lady is going to be there, and they're going to arrest her. That's the plan. But they're armed to the gills for anything to go wrong. So, which of course, it's a movie. Things go wrong.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of shooting. Like 5 people die. The drug pin lady has a baby in front of her, and Clarice shoots her anyway, which was kind of insane.
It really was. It was kind of crazy.
I just don't like this scene. Was not.
It was my problem with this scene is it was more interested in the action than the characters.
Yeah,
and it wasn't a good intro for Clarice.
And like I kind of like I understand what they're trying to do with her character, or even the writer trying to do with her character, because the whole point is she is really good at her job and she was doing what she had learned to do in the situation, and it sounds like she got burned for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And they're telling her basically that she was trigger happy, and she's like, I just did what I was trained to do. And that's what the whole movie is. But it's also like an
impossible shot to make. So it's like she's been shot and she's flying backwards and she manages not to kill a baby.
I know. And she shoots the lady like right over the baby's head. Like you see like the blood spray like right over the baby's head. Just kind of weird.
But one thing like to compare it to the previous movie is this movie still is dealing with sexism in just life.
Very lightly, but yeah.
But I think something that's really easy they could have done. And I think a lot of my complaints I would actually issue less at the movie than I would issue at Thomas Harris now that I know a little more about the book. Because if you're changing a lot anyway and trying to stay true, like you might miss some of these things that seem like the way to go, you know? But before they start that raid, she calls everyone off. The raid.
Yeah.
And then this one guy's like, no, we're here. And he just does it anyway.
Yeah.
So they could have explored like she's taking the fall for this man's mistakes.
Right.
That's some interesting
And that guy's
like sexism.
He's not in the movie after that scene.
No, and she never is like, well, he called it in.
It almost was like that should have been like the Ray Liotta character. Maybe. You know?
Yeah.
Because she's fighting with him the whole movie.
Right. So, I wasn't crazy about that.
No, I just think for me, it simply boils down to just come up with something else for this scene. I just didn't think it worked on a lot of levels, but the big thing was she shot a lot of people and she got in trouble for it.
Yeah, now she's like getting investigated and stuff like that. And then we find out like then this is when she goes to Gary Oldman's house and she has the conversation we kind of discussed.
Because he says that he has new information on Hannibal because Hannibal fled and he is a fugitive.
Yeah. And so he was the fourth victim of Hannibal. That's what they say, but he got away.
Mm-hmm.
And so
the only one that survived.
Oh, okay. Yes, I missed that. But cool. Then they do these flashbacks where they show that Gary Oldman was definitely trying to get intimate with Hannibal.
We see Gary Oldman's little butt.
Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely. Because he also has like all these sex toys and stuff that he's like showing Hannibal. Which is one approach when you're meeting your psychiatrist, I guess.
I would say probably inappropriate that he's just going to your house in general.
Yeah.
But obviously.
But he's a killer, so.
And this is fiction. And yeah, he's a murderer. So he probably wanted to go to his house to murder him. Or do whatever he wanted. But
yeah. And so Gary Oldman takes some drugs. And then while he's taking
Hannibal
drugs.
gives him.
Okay, I think I missed
it doesn't really matter. He takes drugs.
But Hannibal tells him, you should cut your face off.
Uh-huh.
And so he starts cutting his face off. Now, I know that Hannibal has powerful words.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like they either shouldn't have shown this and just said that actually, this is what they should have done. They should have, like the guy in the cell in Silence of the Lambs that he convinces to kill himself, they should have just told us that he convinced this man to try and cut his face off under the influence of drugs, which would have been way scarier than watching it happen. Because when I watched it happen, I was like, oh man, I thought Hannibal cut him up. That would be more interesting.
They also showed, remember the last movie, they talked about the nurse who like he ripped her jaw off, basically. They showed it in this movie, happening. When in the last movie, we talked about how terrifying it is that all we see is the guy showing Clarice a picture that we don't even see. Like, it's that horrendous. But then in this movie, we get to see it. And it's just like, I think the other way was more effective.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got to talk about how this part was shot, though, because it is...
Oh, the flashback?
Terrible. I hate... And this happens a lot in movies, this style. What is it that's going on?
Well, I think I'm not sure, but it's a lot of like blown out lighting.
It looks like long exposure almost because you get those streaks, but it's also slow motion.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it so much.
I mean, I think it's a style preference on our part. And I think it's something that like, if you watch a movie from like 98 to 2007, like every third movie is going to have this. Especially if there's a flashback.
Lord of the Rings has it.
Yeah, but those all work.
No. I'm saying that they've worked like because when we were watching the movie, we were talking about what you just said, and I'm like, I remember M. Night does it in The Village, and it worked for me in The Village. But in this movie, he does it for so long, for long stretches of time.
We're talking about something different.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Just slightly. In the flashback scene, it's also like blown out. And
what does blown out mean?
Like I think it's like overlit and like.
Oh, I'm talking about
overexposed or something, but you're talking about they'll film something in like 24 frames a second, and then they'll slow it down.
The lighting, all of it looked terrible. It looked absolutely terrible. But I'm specifically talking about what you just said.
Or it's either I can't remember if it's shooting at a low frame rate and then speeding it up.
Yeah, it's something.
No, it's the other way. It's shooting
at a high frame rate but slowing it down.
It's shooting at like 24 frames and then also slowing it down so it becomes really choppy.
Oh gosh, it looks so bad most of the time. But like I said, in The Village, when M. Night does it, I think it's a really effective because it's really scary. In Lord of the Rings, he'll do it for only 2 seconds, maybe.
Yeah.
And like I think it can be effective to show disorientation, And I think in this movie, I have never seen someone use this effect this often in a movie, but it is all over this movie. And there are a couple times.
Go back and watch Gladiator again.
Okay, but in this movie, a couple times it made sense.
Yeah.
Because of the disorientation part of it. The scene, though, yuck.
Yeah, and I think that's one, it's a early 2000s thing, and then two, I think it's a Ridley Scott thing.
Yeah.
If you watch a lot of his movies, you're going to get that effect.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it's kind of like, well, why critique reggae music when you don't like reggae music?
Well, that's how it feels, and I hate it. So
yeah. But I do think it was overused even, at any level.
Yeah, and then to go back to story-wise, like what you were talking about, how it's just kind of a bummer for you to see it and see how it happened, him ripping his face off and cutting it off, all that stuff. I agree with you on that. Just like, I think it would have been more effective to not have seen it. For Clarice to sit there talking to him and like it's all parsed out in the story and the dialogue, like in the last movie, where a lot of things were parsed out in the dialogue and you just felt really gross.
Yeah. But again, on the other hand, I do want to say that I wanted this not to be like Silence of the Lambs. So I think I would prefer, in a weird way, I think I would prefer this to like a bastardized demi version of this movie, where someone's like, no, we have to make it just like Silence of the Lambs. And you're like, yeah, but
it's really boring.
But the book isn't good. It's like, this makes sense. And I think, again, knowing all the stuff about the book not being so good, I think Ridley Scott actually is able to key into some of the, like, he's like, but the plot's interesting, even though it doesn't work, I don't think that well. He's still able to be like, let's kind of pump up the like intensity and not go for the characterization because it sounds like the characters are kind of chewed up and spit out in the book. Yeah. So he's like, let's...
Which I appreciate him for doing, making these changes and doing these things. I don't know if I'm a fan of him, period. And I think this is the movie where I'm kind of figuring that out. There are movies of his that I really enjoy. Love Alien.
Yes.
Gladiator, I remember being good.
Gladiator's amazing.
It's good.
It's amazing.
That's about all I can remember right now.
Yeah. Prometheus is great.
Oh, Prometheus is good. I liked that.
Yeah. The more we talk about this movie, though, funny enough, the more I think I'm like, kind of giving Ridley the benefit of the doubt and kind of going, I think
you did what you could, buddy.
With the cards you were dealt, I think you kind of did the best you could do. Yeah. There's just certain stylized things that I would change, but also like 20 years later, he would change too.
Also, to point out too, because the source material seems pretty whatever, Julianne Moore's performance is very forgettable.
Well, it's tough because she's following up Jodie.
I know. And she's obviously not trying to do what Jodie did, and I appreciate that.
She takes the I'm a hard ass route, whereas Jodie is much more layered than that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not like super well versed in all the different Southern accents, but I feel like Jodie already in normal life kind of has a little bit of a twinge to her voice, like Matthew McConaughey. And Julianne Morris is like,
it's okay. I mean, it's whatever.
It was like just so distracting.
I think she's just doing what she can. That's how her performance feels. She feels so one note about everything. And then because her character is written so poorly, it's like, what is she even doing in this movie? In the last movie, it was proven how good of an investigator she is. And now she is an agent and she's just sitting in front of a TV monitor the whole time.
But to which, and I want to just say what I said last night to the audience, this was that weird time in history where computers were still novel. And so you watch movies like this and they're
it's a
like,
fun time capsule.
Yeah, they're like, we want to show you them typing and stuff. And we're sitting there and we're going, it's 20 years later. I'm tired of seeing computer screens.
What's weird though, when it's not weird, it's just a choice that was made. But because the movie is more plot heavy instead of like investigating the psychology of all of it, it'll cut back to her after a while and you'll see all this new like, I don't know if it's evidence, but like stuff pasted to the walls. She is investigating, but that's the only reference we have that she is still doing her job.
Right.
Because even at one point they're like, are you even doing your job? And it's like, I don't know if she is. I don't really know what she's doing.
But then Hannibal, he is in Florence, Italy, a place we've been. We saw a couple locations that Jordan and I have been to.
Which makes sense that he would relocate there because in his cell, he had that picture that he drew of the Duomo.
Yes.
which is in Florence,
And
and we have
he's-
seen it with our eyeballs.
We have. And he's just very, he's a classy guy.
Yeah.
I do think Anthony Hopkins' performance is still great in this movie.
Yeah.
I think he's still
probably
like,
read the book and he's like, I'm just gonna do what I did in the last movie.
I did see another great quote where people were like, how did you get back into the mindset of Hannibal? And he's just said, like, I showed up on set, I did the lines, and I like performed.
He's like, what more do you want from me?
He's like, I did think about how it's 10 years later. It's 10 years later in the book, too. So I took that into account. But other than that, I did what is called acting, and it's my job.
Yeah, he looks like he's having a great time. And I
He
think a
does
lot
look
of
like
that
he's having fun.
is good with the acting because he's free man. Well, like he's a fugitive, but he's free now.
Yeah.
And he seems very happy. But he wears a sweet hat.
He wears a great hat. I love the hat. Apparently in the book he has like reconstruction surgery, or like he wears like bandages
They
or
do
something.
a tourist thing.
I think so.
That is so lame to me that is like that would be a plot device. It's
Yeah.
just kind of like,
But Hopkins thought of it more as like he's cocky enough that he's like, I'm hiding in plain
and
sight.
that's more interesting.
And I think that's more Hannibal too.
I think so too.
So I think they nail that part of it.
Yeah.
But he sends a letter to Clarice, and he puts like certain smells on it. And then the actor who plays Hector Salamanca in Breaking
Don
Bad
Hector.
shows up this time with an Italian accent. And he was it? Yeah, it was Italian, and he sniffs
I don't know.
it.
They didn't say, but he had an accent.
Okay.
And they're sniffing it up, and they're giving her scents.
I want to know if that's a real thing that happens.
I know. I'm like, these people's jobs are to sniff things? That's crazy. And like, not only that, they know what it is. I don't
Yeah.
have senses even close to that.
It felt pretty implausible, but it also is like, why would you make this up for a movie? It's also how it felt,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I thought it was funny too before that. So she gets this letter from him, and the letter goes over. He finds out what happened in Seattle, and he sends her a letter about it. And he's just doing his Hannibal thing, trying to like seduce her, not like in
Clarice.
that way, really, but just like.
Well, yeah.
Well, in the book, yeah, but like I'm trying to take it as like seduce her, just like psychologically.
Cat and mouse.
Cat and
you
mouse, yeah. But it's funny when she's having that guy analyze the letter for not. I mean, they get a fingerprint, but she doesn't need a fingerprint. But also, like, what kind of paper is this? What kind of ink is this? And this goes back to the time capsule of computers. He's doing it all on a computer. When it's like, I think that it would be more visually stimulating if he's under a microscope.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's too fun not to do it on a computer in this time.
Yeah. But basically, they're able to like figure out that he's in Italy from this. But obviously, he wants them to find that. He plays piano, thinking about Clarice with her pictures as sheet music. That was kind of goofy, I thought.
Yeah, he
But kind
makes
of
her
like, I
very
liked
well
it.
endowed. Oh no, that's something else. Makes her very busty. There's a lot of
Yes.
busty pictures of Clarice
Yeah,
that are
a lot of
weird.
people are drawing Clarice.
Yeah, even the
naked.
Italian police officer that's been like on the phone with her is.
Yeah, he's-
never seen her before. Doesn't know who she is.
And that to me reeked of like either there's a cut scene or it's one of those things where maybe like while they're shooting the movie, they're like, let's just shoot all this stuff and see if it amounts to anything.
And
Because
it was weird.
there was like no payoff for it or anything like that. And I didn't understand
But
what they were
therefore-
trying to do with it.
At that moment, it's just like maybe he was going for a thing where it is kind of like all these men are just objectifying her. Like that's all they see when they look at her. But because her character was so stale in the movie, there was no like her proving herself or fighting for herself or, you know, because
Yeah.
like in the last movie, like everyone was flirting with her. And there was a lot of interesting stuff about that, like the way she dealt with it.
We talked about that last week. And you know what, folks? Go back and
It's
listen
hard
to
not
it
to
a second
compare this
time.
to the last movie.
You
It's
have to.
not.
Hey, that's what this show is.
That's
the
true.
MPU.
But at one point, I mean, kind of early on in the movie, we meet Ray Liotta. He's some government guy. I don't really get it, but him and Clarice do not like each other.
Yeah.
You go in and they're like, oh, they hate each other.
And Ray's like my easy number 2 performance in the movie.
Yeah, he's really
He's
good.
really good. Yeah.
That's it. I got nothing else on him.
So now let's talk about the police inspector in Rome.
Yeah.
So as they're trying to find out in America where Hannibal is, they're requesting like footage from this perfume shop. And while they're doing it, this police inspector is sitting there and he sees Hannibal and he accesses the FBI's most wanted list and he sees, oh my gosh, it's Hannibal Lecter.
But he goes under a different name, obviously. I don't remember what his alias was.
And then he's like, cool, let me look into this some more. Then he finds out that Marcus, or Mason, I'm sorry.
Wait, hold on though.
Oh, okay.
$3 million reward for turning in Hannibal.
And that's
what the detective sees.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, there are dollar signs in his eyes. Literally, they put dollar signs in his eyes.
Yeah, which was so confusing.
Yeah.
He went ka-ching, and then Mr. Scrooge was in the background. He tipped his cap and winked.
And said, humbug.
But I was thinking Mick Scrooge, actually, from Donald Duck.
Oh,
you know,
I mean,
DuckTales.
He would say that.
Yeah. I mean, he is Scrooge, you know. Anyway.
Mason.
So then we
Gary.
find out that Mason is putting up that $3 million reward.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
This is the first time you've ever said a character's name.
It's true. Mason / Gary. So the guy is going, this police detective's going, okay, cool. I'm going to try
easiest $3 million I've ever made.
Yeah, he's only on the top 10 FBI most wanted list. Easy.
Right up there with Osama bin Laden, which they really made a point to show.
They did. And this would have come out, I guess, before
it went
September
down.
11th. That's interesting.
What? Oh, wait, yeah. What month did this come out?
Because this came out in February.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, I guess he was... Well, I know he was bad before that, but I didn't know he would be someone that, like, American audiences all would be like, oh, that's him. But they definitely, like, point him out. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So... The detective gets a pickpocket to try and get a fingerprint of Hannibal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when he's doing this pickpocket is like chasing him through the streets for a while, which was sort of funny.
Yeah, it was a long time. But they established kind of like that Hannibal was onto him.
Yeah, and that's.
And I think the sets were cool. Like the location was cool.
No, I'm not blaming the movie. It was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
And you're kind of sitting there like, I know what's going to happen here.
Oh, yeah.
And then Hannibal just quietly stabs the guy and keeps walking, but the guy gets a fingerprint. And then the detective pulls his hands away from the carotid artery and lets the guy bleed out. Okay.
I'm assuming that's a panic situation.
No, I think it's a I don't want loose ends situation.
Oh, okay. And then he literally cleans his hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think that detective's not on the level.
Yeah.
Is what we're
well,
supposed
they
to see.
establish when they introduce his character because he goes to Hannibal because Hannibal's trying to become like a librarian or something, and his predecessor disappeared, so the detective is investigating that, and Hannibal, because he knows everything, is like, "Oh, you were working on this case though, I thought, in the papers. You must have been reassigned. I hope it wasn't for bad reasons."
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, okay, this detective might not be the by the books kind of guy.
Yeah. So all of that's sort of interesting. It is the second act, and I do appreciate that the story's trying to do some other stuff, but it feels a little misplaced.
Yeah, it just feels all over the place. I don't know.
It makes sense to me reading that the book is 600 pages. Now I'm like, I get it.
Okay.
Now. Because
they had a hard time.
Yeah.
Adapting
and
this.
Yeah, more and more I'm like, I think they did a good job. So basically more business. Then we find out that detective, that Italian detective, is the descendant of this Patsy, who was hanged at this square in Florence
for murdering someone.
I like this scene. This scene was pretty cool because they're like, okay, we're gonna capture him and then we're gonna get him to Mason. Mm-hmm. Great, and I'm gonna get my $3 million. And then when they're going in, let's see. Yes. So Anthony Hopkins is like running a slide and he's talking about, what's his face getting hung? Judas hanging himself.
And it's specifically the artworks that depict this and commemorate it. And
yeah.
It sounds like that was like his audition to like officially become the librarian.
I think like a historian or something.
But I mean, when I say librarian, it's like some crazy art library or something.
Yeah. So anyway, all of that, and then the guy talks to him afterward, and then Hannibal ties him up and he hangs him off the balcony. And there's a lot of tension in the scene. It's pretty cool.
Even the bowel removal, Micah.
That part, I was like, it felt like this movie was just so like PG-13, and then all of a sudden it was like really hard R.
It all made sense per Hannibal's character. Like he would do something theatrical like that.
Yeah, but it just like from a filmmaking perspective, it like all the gross scenes like really grossed me out.
Yeah.
Whereas in the other two movies, I was grossed out, but in a way that I felt. I was like, my stomach was turning, and what I was seeing was
like morally
really
wrong,
disturbing.
Yeah.
And this was a little bit more like, oh, he just disemboweled that guy. Sick.
Okay.
Like, give me some more popcorn. This is awesome. It's how the violence felt in this movie to me a little bit. A little bit more like, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that.
Teens are into this violence, whereas you watch the other two and you're like, you're at the sleepover and you're like, yeah, wasn't that funny?
When he like put her in the hole.
But I'm gonna stay at home tonight. But it's not because I was freaked out by the movie and need to go and like sleep next to my parents. It was totally because I forgot to feed the dog and my mom's gonna ground. She grounded me. Sorry guys. So there are giant boars in this movie.
Yeah, and they play boar on the floor.
Oh, don't even take me to that. Go watch Succession, folks. That's some scary stuff.
Yeah.
There's giant boars in this movie, and those pigs are cool. They're cool
so
scary.
And scary.
They're really scary, but I liked that, and I felt like there was some cool kind of not symbolism, but it's cool how like the previous movie, Silence of the Lambs, and then like pigs are featured heavily in this movie.
Sure.
So there's like this farm animal kind of thing. I had a note because they show them around this time, but it makes more sense.
The payoff is later.
Talk about it later, yeah.
So he hangs him, disembowels him. He gets Clarice on the phone for a second, realizes that she's been contacting the inspector, and then he goes to America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then while he's in America, he kind of stalks Clarice
and Ray Liotta.
And Ray Liotta. Yeah. So we're kind of at the end. Wow.
Well, that middle part is just so big.
Yeah, I skipped through a bunch of notes and I didn't even realize we had passed them, but I think it's fine.
Like what?
Oh, it's just like the specifics, and I think it's fine to pass it. I think we've covered that section.
Oh, well, it is important to note that, so Clarice has been working on the Hannibal case, and Ray Liotta was talking to Gary Oldman about something, and Gary Oldman agreed to pay him $500,000 if he gave this I think it was a forged postcard from Hannibal that would be sent.
Yeah.
And it basically like discredited anything, like it made Clarice's job, because it looked like it was addressed to her, and it made it looked probably biased, like,
well, I think it referenced something to their romantic entanglement,
something like that, which would defraud her from working on this, so they like suspend her.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, you knew Ray Liotta was not a good guy, but now you're like, oh, he's like a bad guy. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's this big scene. So I had forgotten at the beginning of this episode to talk about when I first saw this movie. Now, This is the first time I saw the movie, but when I was a kid, like pretty young, I was at my grandparents' house, and I was upstairs in like my little section, and I had the TV on, and I was flipping through channels, and I flipped through, and I saw this crazy-looking person drinking out of a cup on a balcony. And that was that Gary Oldman scene where he's talking to Ray Liotta. Mm-hmm. And it was this kind of like very grotesque, like I can kind of remember the feeling where I was like, what is this? And just thinking, oh, this is bad. Like if my parents walked upstairs, I'd be in trouble. I don't know what this is. But then like flipping away from the channels and then coming back to it. And so I came back to it at the scene we're about to discuss, where Julianne Moore is on the phone with Hannibal, and he's like leading her around cat and mouse, and then he reaches out and touches her on the carousel. And until last night, I thought that was at the beginning of the movie. For some reason, I thought that scene was at the beginning of the movie. And so I was a little confused until that happened. And then finally, I went away from the channel again. I was probably like listening and seeing if my parents were like coming upstairs or my grandma or something. And so like going back and forth. And then I flipped it again and I saw the scene where Ray Liotta, he takes off the top of his scalp and
What
fries
channel is
his
this
brain.
on? Is this daytime?
I feel like it was TNT or something like that.
And it was
But-
daytime?
I think it was. It would have been a
Wow.
Thanksgiving weekend.
Wow.
You know what? I bet they were doing like it's Thanksgiving and Hannibal's coming for dinner.
Oh.
Like it's time for a feast.
That doesn't feel like a TNT thing. I could see that being on AMC
Maybe AMC. Maybe
or like
AMC.
Spike.
Maybe Spike. Yeah. But because again, like if you just edit a couple of things out of this movie, it's pretty much PG-13.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hard PG-13,
Yeah.
but still.
You mean TV-14?
Oh. But anyway, that was my experience with the movie. So it always had this kind of like grotesque feeling. And I've
Oh, yeah.
kind of avoided these well, I have until now, these movies. And I think part of it is seeing that imagery as a kid too
I don't
young to
blame
see
you.
it. But
I know that for me, I have a memory with this movie specifically when I was very young, like a kid, and I was at a friend's house who I played sports with, and they were definitely like of a family who they just could watch anything they wanted, and I could not watch anything I wanted as a kid.
Oh yeah.
And I remember like at one point my friend, I think even said like, "Do you want to watch a movie? Like let's watch Hannibal." And I was like, "Oh no, my parents won't allow me to, like they don't allow me to watch that." And then have you seen the cover of this movie?
Yeah.
It is freaky.
It's
And so I remember at their house seeing the cover of the movie and feeling and like
having that gut feeling.
yeah, and I knew like, and I think just based on the cover, I didn't even know what the movie was, but I just knew like I looked at it and I was like, I'm not allowed to watch that. I just know by looking at it. And I was just like, no, I can't watch that.
Oh man, I think they had a UK promo for the movie where it's like Hannibal's face like all split up and like sewn together, and I looked it up before we started recording, and because it was banned, they were like, no, we
Is it
can't put
too
these
crazy?
posters up in the subways in London and stuff like that. They're like, no, stop, and it's pretty freaky.
Is it?
I mean, we've all seen a lot worse by now, but I mean. It's like, yeah, that's too much. That's too much.
Because they're like, kids take the subway.
So yeah, Carousel.
So she gets suspended. She goes home. Kind of throughout the movie, ever since she got the tapes from Barney that were recorded of her and Hannibal talking, she has been listening to them.
Yeah.
So
Which is weird hearing the audio from Silence of the Lambs and then
hearing Julianne Moore
talk over it.
Yeah, and I get that. But so she's been like listening to these tapes and even listening to Hannibal talk about her to Barney. And she falls asleep. Hannibal is at her house, but she doesn't know. And when she wakes up, she knows that he's been there.
Yeah.
And he calls her and he takes her on this chase.
Yeah. And then after the chase is done, like Mason's team gets Hannibal.
Yeah.
And Mason wants to eat Hannibal.
Yeah.
Or
it's all a revenge. His motivation is revenge.
Or actually have him be eaten by the pigs.
Well, it sounds like he wanted to eat him, and then I'm like, wait, but now you're feeding him to pigs? I don't get it.
Yeah, he did say he wanted to eat him.
Because he said, first we're going to remove your feet and eat your feet, and then over the next 7 hours, we're going to be preparing your body to be eaten. I'm thinking like roasted over a spigot. But then he was like, and then we're going to make sure you're alive the whole time. Like, we're going to hook you up. And then they just take him straight into the pig thing.
You're right.
And it's like,
you're right.
So he's all talk. I mean, he's still going to die a painful death. But yeah, I thought that was funny.
So then there's the big pig scene.
Clarice saves him at the last moment.
And they get out together. And I do like how Clarice gets shot and Hannibal like picks her up and he's like, I'm going to take care of her. And I did not read that as romantic. But we know that Ridley Scott was not interested in that part of it. And I'm very glad he was, because I liked the idea of like hearkening back to Silence of the Lambs where he goes, no, this would be improper for me to let this woman die.
Yeah, that's how I took it too.
Yeah. And
because even when she was freeing him from like his restraints, she was like, do not touch me.
Yeah. And so then the caretaker pushes Gary Oldman into the pigs. I do feel like there should have been a scene with the physician that showed Gary Oldman like treating him really poorly or something.
I agree. All they really showed was him like yelling at the guy sometimes throughout the movie.
But it felt to me like, yeah, if I was in as much pain as I'm assuming this character is in, I'd be yelling too.
But if you want to read the book, it sounds like that person gets their due. But I have no
really
interest
gross.
in reading about that based on the synopsis. Not worth it.
Yeah, his caretaker is his sister in the book, and there's a lot more where that came from.
Yes, and we'll end it there.
Yeah.
So Hannibal takes Julianne Moore to
some mansion. Oh, it's Ray Liotta's mansion.
Well, like his lake house.
Yeah.
What's a mansion to you?
Anything bigger than 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
Yep.
So she wakes up. He stitches her up. She's,
the makeup on her stitching is crazy too, because it looks infected.
They did a good job.
But also, I was like, please, I need to not see that anymore.
I know, but she's morphined the F out.
Yeah.
And throughout this time, Hannibal changed her into just such a terribly revealing dress that it's just like, oh, this is an even bigger bummer now.
Yeah.
But she is stumbling around, can't get her bearings, does call the police, has the wherewithal to do that, but then is trying to go downstairs and figure out what's going on, but also like defend herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then
what?
Well, kind of while that's happening, we're hearing Ray Liotta and Hannibal talk.
Yeah.
And Ray Liotta sounds a little strange. And she goes into the dining room and Hannibal's just cooking. Like nothing's weird.
Yeah.
Ray Liotta, he looks, very calm, very happy. Simple as that. Yeah, and they have a great dinner together and ride off into the sunset.
And then credits roll.
Yeah.
No, then Hannibal, this is probably like the most famous scene from the movie, I'm assuming.
It has to be.
For the most part, the effects hold up.
Yeah.
There's still a little bit of some maybe aged CG on it.
I didn't notice anything. But also it's hard to look at.
Yeah. But it's like a mix of like CG and puppetry and actor and makeup. So I think it works pretty well. But Hannibal takes off the guy's scalp.
Yeah.
And then he cuts off a piece of his brain. After he rips off the protective membrane. That to me was like, oh my gosh.
I mean, you rip off the top.
Oh my gosh.
I know. You rip off the top of someone's skull, they're going to be out of it. So Ray Liotta's out of it. And I do remember I saw this scene specifically on TV years before I even saw the movie. And I was old enough that it wasn't shocking. I mean, it was shocking, but not as a kid.
Yeah.
And I was asking my dad, like, what is this movie and like what's going on? And he's kind of describing Hannibal as a person. And I'm just seeing all this brain stuff. And I think I was like a teenager. And as a teenager, I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
What is going on? Anyway, what I do think is interesting about this scene to show Hannibal, I don't know, it's a good Hannibal moment. He's talking about the brain and he's talking about which part of the brain they should eat. And he takes out his prefrontal cortex. Because that's your decision making and your judgment part of your brain. So he's removing that part of Ray Liotta.
Oh, it's so nasty.
And he says some pretty like mean things to Clarice. Makes sense. His prefrontal cortex was just ripped out of his skull.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's hard to talk about the specifics of the brain. The more we're talking about it, the more I'm not feeling well.
I know, and his acting is like way too good in this scene.
It's an effective scene, and I think that is kind of like, well, I mean, that's a pretty worthy payoff to the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to get to that scene.
Yeah, and he cuts off a little piece and fries it and feeds it to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is some. I mean, I think even still, we're 20 years past this movie's release. And that to me was still like, oh, this still is shocking to me.
Yes.
So I think good on you, Ridley. So that scene's crazy. Then Clarice tries to make an escape. She's unsuccessful. She then. Did
you think he cut off her hand?
No, he didn't.
Did you think he did?
Oh, yeah, I did think that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she handcuffs herself to him to keep him there until the police arrive. And then he says, oh, this is going to hurt. And he takes a knife and he
cuts off
slams
his hand,
down.
You
but
assume.
He cuts it down off his hand instead. Yeah. And then we see him on an airplane. And he brought food with him on the plane. and he has a little
Pretty nice spread, if you ask me.
Yeah. He has a little Tupperware with like some really gross, like, for lack of a better term, gray matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just funny. It's funny when, you know, like movies and scripts and words and stuff sometimes just don't make sense because the kid's like, man, that gray stuff looks really good. And you're like, no, it doesn't. It looks disgusting. I would never eat that. And if I was a kid, I would not be interested in eating that. But he's like, ooh, you have good taste, my boy.
My mommy always told me, always try something new.
Yeah, never be afraid to try something new. And he feeds the kid the brains.
And he likes it. Kid likes it. He's hooked.
Which kind of like, I kind of like that ending, even though it's pretty hammy or brainy. Yabbing. Because it kind of reminds me, it like harkens back to the ending of Silence of the Lambs where he says, I'm having an old friend for dinner. It's like, yeah, I kind of like him being on a plane feeding a kid a brain.
What I
It's
don't
a brain
know.
plane.
The like end of this movie, it felt like there was no resolve for anything. Is how it felt. Like the only resolve I feel is Gary Oldman got his due. He got what was coming to him.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of it. Like, okay, yeah, Ray Liotta, that bad thing happens to him, but did he really deserve that? I don't know if he really deserved to be fed his own brain. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then like Clarice gets out, he lets her go. And I mean, I prefer this to the book 100%, but they just like see her trying to look for Hannibal. And it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot to be desired for.
Well, and I think because they are following the novel so well, and then the novel ends with them
Running
going
off
into the
together.
sunset together. And so I think there is kind of a weird disjoint in the movie because they've been following the novel, and then they're like, well, this ending's crazy. Whereas even though I'm blaming the faults of this movie on the book, I really am, it feels like maybe in the book he is leading up to that. And so then even if it's not satisfying because you didn't like it, it's still like a satisfying ending. Whereas this is like, it's leading up to that, and then it's like, well, that ending's stupid. And then, but we weren't building up to this ending, you know?
Yeah.
But I lay the faults at the book. I don't want to read it because there's too many things that we found in the details that I don't want to read about.
Mm-hmm.
It was certainly an interesting watch.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you take into account the book, I'd put it more on the, it's not a movie I really like, but I think they did the best they could.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of, it's been fascinating to kind of try and figure this one out a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree with you on the story / source material. It's just an interesting case where the book is not better than the movie.
Yeah.
And
I know we are saying that as people who haven't read the book, but I think if you read the differences between the book and the movie, I think you would probably agree. Like, and I think Jonathan Demme and Jodie Foster not wanting to be in this is
telling.
Pretty telling, yeah.
In terms of like the movie, I think there was just some stuff that I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying about it, but it's okay.
Yeah.
I've seen worse movies.
Yeah. And it's a pretty much a product of its time as well. You know,
I think
it's
so
not
too.
timeless like Silence of the Lambs, but I think sometimes we can be unfair to movies when they're not timeless. You know, when you look back and it's like, well, you got to think like in 2000, this is a pretty sweet thriller, you know, or 2001. But yeah, so interesting. I mean, we got to meet the art director, so that's freaking cool. And this is probably our best episode ever now. It'll be hard to be dethroned now.
Wow.
But we still have 2 episodes left of Hannibal. Is that right, Jordan?
Yep.
Check my notes.
What's next?
Next week, it's Red Dragon.
We've already watched it.
Not quite like this, we haven't. So let's talk about it next week. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear us talk about Zoolander, you got to go to www.patreon.com/MICAHMCCAW. Sign up for as little as $3. Go listen to that episode. Go hang out with us over there. There's a lot of fun stuff. It's pretty consistent. There's going to be a lot of good stuff on that website all the time. So pump us up. Let's go. And guess what else? If we get 50 patrons, we're going to launch a Patreon-only podcast. The MPU goes to Emeryville, and we're going to finish out all the Pixar movies, whether they have a sequel or not.
Wow.
And we'll do
It's a pretty sweet deal.
Upcoming Pixar movies, too, when they come out.
Oh, my gosh.
Get us to 50. Let's go. It's only a cup of coffee. Who's that peeking behind the bars? That's Hannibal. Who's that played by 4 different stars? That's Hannibal. And whose face is detachable? That's Hannibal. And who's everybody's favorite cannibal? That's Hannibal.